Acquiring employment, the purpose of the resume. This module is where we're now getting ready for what I would presume you expected to be working on, which is your resume. And in this process, I just have a few thoughts and insights and then specific instructions for you to consider. Now, the first thing I want to point out is oftentimes people have a resume, whether it be months or years or decades old. It's good to perhaps start with what you once had just so that you have a beginning point rather than creating it from scratch. Now, if you happen to not have one, that's perfectly fine. You can go online and find templates that you can be using for a resume. The point is at this point, we're not trying to polish it. We're trying to just simply create it. Now, with this resume, what I want you to understand is first and foremost, the purpose of the resume. It's very much misunderstood as to the resume as it's not meant to get you the job. It's merely meant to get you the interview. What I'm trying to explain here is you know whether or not your resume is working if you're getting interviews. If you're getting interviews, then it's succeeding. Your job is to get the position. So what we want to do is first and foremost is create a resume with the intent of, is it giving me opportunities to meet with companies and be considered for a position? If I'm getting interviews, if I'm actually getting callbacks on the things that I'm submitting it for, then it is working. And so that's the telltale sign of a good resume. Now, understanding that, we can now build the resume with the intent of putting into it what we feel is needed to bring questions to the mind of the interviewer, the potential employer, as to why they ought to meet with us and find out more about your skills and your abilities. So what we're going to be doing is in the resume, we're going to very clearly start documenting the accomplishments that you have. Now, when creating this, remember in the previous exercises, we took time to write down characteristic traits, accomplishments, things that you've done, where you have experience. This is the chance now to try and organize that information into a resume so that you can actually have this all organized in a way that you can present it to someone else. Now, the first thing that we want to do is clearly identify what successes and accomplishments we've had that we can now quantify with metrics in numbers, percentages, things that you did that actually then materialize with numerical goals. Now, this is very important because you don't want to have hyperbole such as I work hard, I'm goal-oriented, I'm efficient, I work timely. Those things are just too abstract. What we're looking for is I always had things done within the deadline. Say in the accounting world, I had financials prepared no later than the 5th of the following month. You were able to state down that you were able to keep things within budget. You were able to prepare forecasts in a timely way. You were able to, let's say, actually develop trends and show current ratios, liquidity ratios. These are the things that the business owner needs to see that you articulate in numbers. Now, one of the things that I want you to be clear with is we need to be speaking in facts, not just opinion. Your idea of I'm the greatest and best, it's why that's the case. You have maybe statements or reviews of your previous employer that might be helpful here. As you're trying to collect all this information, all of this is coming together to create the resume. Now, the resume will have structure here in a moment, but what we want to do is just kind of collect this now in a resume setting. A lot of times people like to begin with bullet points. That's excellent, but I prefer the sentence with bolded words that actually help emphasize certain characteristics. Now, with this, we're going to have in mind the ideal position that we want to have, and it's with that context that you're able to now start drafting the resume to clearly show why you're the perfect candidate for that type of a position. Now, understand that on the information or on the resume, they need to have your information. One of the things that I notice is oftentimes overlooked happens to be your contact information. The individual has your name, let's say, and on the resume, they see things that mean they should meet with you, but you don't have your name and your email or your phone number, and so I don't know how to reach you. So we want to make sure right at the top that type of contact information is available. It's common today to actually show such things as your LinkedIn profile, for example. These things are right at the top so that as I glance through as an interviewer and I'm considering you as an applicant, I can see the things that stand out. These are the things that I'm looking for. Right at the top then is the contact information that I would expect to see. Now, with this, one of the things that I want you to also understand understand is as you're creating the resume, you need to be thinking about what common words are used in your role or position, various tasks or responsibilities that may be stated in a job description that we can add or incorporate into the resume. Because today, oftentimes what happens is as you submit your resume, it's not a human that may be seeing it for the first time. It literally could be a software program that is analyzing the keywords that you're actually inputting into the resume to see if they match the job descriptions that were provided. As those matches occur, your resume then rises to the top, and at that point, you're then one of those candidates considered for a position. So the key words that you're looking to consider are job titles, words that you would expect to find in a job description, skills that are necessary for that role. These are the things that actually help the computer identify you and pull you to the top for a human to then consider. Now, one of the things that I want you to understand is, again, that the goal of the resume is simply getting the interview. Nothing more, nothing less. A good resume, when prepared properly, will achieve this very specific goal. The one thing I also will add to this is the more clear you can be in your resume as to what skills you have for the position you want to apply for, the more likely it is you'll find the employment. So let me just kind of wrap some things up here with regards to your resume and what it ought to look like. At the very top, you should expect to see things such as your contact information after your name. So right there at the top, if I'm looking to contact you, how do I do so? It's not uncommon to see listed there such things as your LinkedIn profile, your email, your phone number. Now, with that information, one of the things that I want you to consider is your email. If it's something that is odd or peculiar, you may want to actually consider using one that is a little bit more generic and germane. What I mean by that is if yours happened to say sexymama@gmail.com, that may not be the appropriate email to be listing this time, okay? You also, with your voicemail on your phone, may want to consider changing what you currently have so that it's a little bit more friendly rather than something that's more shocking and fun in the sense that it may be discouraging or a turnoff if an employer were to call and happen to leave a message. These things are little nuances that are very important as you're being considered in the employment pool. The next thing that I'd like to consider with the resume is as you're listing out your skills or your accomplishments, you want to actually keep this to no more than a third of the page. These are the things that you've accomplished. This is what you're good at, and this is what you can do. These are not specific to any particular position. These are, over the course of your career, things that you've done. So in other words, it's anything and everything that you've successfully done, not specific to any particular role or an order of what's going on with your employment history. This is just what you're good at. The next is your obvious employment history. This is where you're going to just clearly identify, I worked for this company for this duration. It was in this position that I worked. These are the beginning and end dates of those employments. If it's less than a year, you just want to state the year. You don't want to say month to month. You just want to state years. If it happens to be multiple years, you can put the months to the month and year and then month and year, but I still like to just stick to the year-to-year analysis just because I think it's appropriate and it's what's needed at this point. The next thing that I'd like to emphasize about the resume is you need to be prepared to provide references, people that will collaborate, verify, and speak positively of you. Many people choose on their resumes to keep this off until requested or keep this off until they're in a position where they're meeting with an employer. So you may want to actually have this on a second page. The last thing I'd like to say about resumes is the length. Some people just wonder, how long ought it to be? If you've been in a management role, it's appropriate to have 2 pages for your resume. If you haven't been in a management position, you can actually prepare your resume and keep it to a single page, and that's perfectly fine, just stating your skills and abilities, the positions you've had with your employment, and be done. If you've been in management or upper management, it's not uncommon to have a second and perhaps even a third page, but a third page is stretching it. A third page is possibly too much information at this point. All of that could perhaps be provided in an interview setting. Again, the purpose of the resume merely being that of trying to get an interview. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is give you an assignment. Your challenge here at this point is to take all of the thoughts that you've gathered in the previous activities and compile them into this first step resume so that you can literally have in front of you something that's formatted for your use as a resume. With that in mind, you're going to now have your first template or working resume to begin with. So remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal.